The stars had watched Earth for billions of years. They had seen the first life crawl from the oceans. They had seen humans build cities, wage wars, and finally reach for the sky. But the stars held secrets that humanity had never imagined. The Galactic Council had ruled this part of the universe for 12,000 years. 47 different alien species worked together under one government. They controlled trade, made laws, and kept peace across 10,000 worlds. When a new species developed space travel, the Council came to them. Every time, the new species surrendered. Every time, they joined the Council as servants, not equals. This had happened hundreds of times. No one had ever refused. Ambassador StarBound-X stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the blue and green planet below. Earth. Such a small world. Such a young species. His purple scales shifted as he breathed the recycled air of his ship. Behind him, 300 warships waited in formation. Each ship carried enough firepower to burn entire continents to ash. "Begin the transmission," StarBound-X ordered. His words were translated instantly into every human language. Every television, every phone, every computer screen on Earth showed his face. Billions of humans stopped what they were doing and watched. "People of Earth," StarBound-X began. His voice was calm, almost bored. He had given this speech many times before. "You have achieved faster than light travel. This brings you under the authority of the Galactic Council. By our ancient laws, you are ordered to surrender. Your governments will be dissolved. Your military forces will be destroyed. Your leaders will come to us for re-education. You have 72 hours to comply. If you refuse, we will take your planet by force. Resistance is pointless. We have done this many times. We have never failed." The transmission ended. StarBound-X turned to his second-in-command, a tall insectoid creature named Crix. "How long do you think they will take to surrender?" Crix asked. "Most species surrender within the first hour," StarBound-X replied. "Humans are primitive. They will probably take longer to organize their response. I expect their surrender by tomorrow." On Earth, chaos erupted. But it was not the chaos StarBound-X expected. In Washington, the president called an emergency meeting. In Beijing, generals gathered around screens showing the alien fleet. In Moscow, scientists frantically analyzed the transmission. In small towns and big cities, people looked up at the sky with fear, but also with something else. Something the aliens had not predicted. Anger. Humanity had spent its entire history fighting. Tribes against tribes, nations against nations, brother against brother. But now, for the first time, every human had the same enemy, and humanity had always been very, very good at making enemies regret their choices. Within 6 hours, something remarkable happened. Old enemies began talking. Countries that had pointed nuclear weapons at each other for decades were suddenly sharing military secrets. Scientists who had competed for funding were now working together. The United Nations held an emergency session, and for the first time in its history, every single nation voted the same way. Secretary General Elena Vasquez was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had spent 30 years in diplomacy. She had negotiated peace treaties and trade deals. She had never negotiated with aliens, but she was not afraid. "We need to respond," she told the assembled leaders. "Every hour we stay silent, they think we are weak." "What can we say?" asked the French president. "They have 300 ships. We have 12 experimental vessels that have only been tested twice. We say no," Vasquez replied simply. The room went quiet. "Madam Secretary," said the Chinese premier slowly, "if we refuse, they will attack. Millions will die." "Millions will die anyway," Vasquez said. "Look at their history. Look at what they do to species that surrender. They erase cultures. They take children and teach them to forget their parents. They turn free people into servants." She stood up. "I would rather die free than live as a slave. And I believe most humans feel the same way." The vote was unanimous. 20 hours after the ultimatum, Earth sent its response. Every screen on every ship in the alien fleet showed Secretary General Vasquez standing at a podium. Behind her stood the leaders of every nation on Earth. Russians stood next to Americans. Chinese stood next to Japanese. Old hatreds were forgotten. Old wounds were ignored. Humanity stood together. Vasquez smiled. It was not a nervous smile or a fake smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Ambassador Thalvex, she began. Thank you for your offer. We have discussed it. Every nation, every government, every voice that wanted to be heard has spoken. She paused. The alien fleet waited. Our answer is no. On the bridge of his flagship, Thalvex felt something he had not felt in 300 years. Confusion. No? He repeated. No. Vasquez continued. We will not surrender. We will not dissolve our governments. We will not give you our children to brainwash. We will not become your servants. Crix made a clicking sound of disbelief. In 12,000 years, no species has ever refused. Furthermore, Vasquez said, her smile growing wider, we would like to invite you to Earth for discussions. We have questions about your council. We have questions about your laws, and we have some ideas of our own that we think you should hear. She leaned closer to the camera. We are not afraid of you, Ambassador. We have been fighting each other since we climbed down from the trees. We have survived ice ages and plagues and wars that killed hundreds of millions. We have split the atom and walked on our moon. We have done impossible things before, and we will do impossible things again. Her smile was bright and warm, but her eyes were cold. You have 72 hours to accept our invitation. If you refuse, if you attack our world, you will learn what humanity is capable of. You will learn why we have survived everything the universe has thrown at us. And you will learn that some species are not meant to be conquered. The transmission ended. On his bridge, Ambassador Thalvex stared at the blank screen. Behind him, his officers whispered in worried voices. In 12,000 years, nothing like this had ever happened. Ambassador, Crix said quietly. What do we do? Thalvex did not answer immediately. He was thinking about that smile. There was something in it that bothered him. Something dangerous. We wait, he finally said. And we learn more about these humans. I think we may have made a mistake. It was the first smart thing he had done since arriving at Earth. Ambassador Thalvex made a decision that would change everything. Against the advice of his military commanders, he accepted the human invitation. He would go down to Earth and meet these strange creatures face to face. His shuttle landed in Geneva, Switzerland. The city was old by human standards, full of stone buildings and narrow streets. Thousands of humans lined the roads to watch the alien ambassador arrive. Thalvex expected to see fear on their faces. Instead, he saw curiosity. Children pointed at his purple scales and laughed with wonder, not terror. Old men and women watched with calm eyes. Young people held up small devices and took pictures. They do not seem afraid. Thalvex observed to his guards. They are hiding their fear, one guard suggested. But Thalvex was not so sure. Secretary General Vasquez met him at the United Nations building. She was smaller than he expected. Humans were small creatures in general, soft and fragile. They had no claws, no scales, no natural weapons. By all logic, they should have been prey, not predators. Welcome to Earth, Ambassador, Vasquez said. We have prepared a room for discussions. We have also prepared food and drink. Though I am not sure what your species eats. I have studied your food, Thalvex replied. I believe I can consume your coffee without harm. I am curious about this drink. My analysts say humans cannot function without it. Vasquez laughed. It was a genuine laugh, warm and friendly. Your analysts are correct. Coffee is essential to human civilization. They walked through the building together. Thalvex noticed that there were no guards pointing weapons at him. Humans walked past, some nodding politely, others ignoring him completely. It was strange. When council representatives visited conquered worlds, they were surrounded by security. The conquered species were always watched, always controlled. Here, humans acted like his presence was normal, like having an alien in their building was just another Tuesday. The negotiations began. StarBound-X explained the Council's laws, their history, their power. He showed records of conquered worlds, expecting the humans to be impressed by the Council's might. Instead, they asked questions. "How many ships do you have in total?" asked General Marcus Chen, a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. "Approximately 50,000 warships across all member species," StarBound-X answered. "And how many soldiers?" "Several trillion, counting all ground forces." Chen nodded and wrote something on a piece of paper. "And in 12,000 years, how many rebellions have you faced?" StarBound-X paused. This was not a question he had expected. Rebellions are rare. Perhaps a dozen serious ones. What happened to them? They were crushed, of course. How long did they last? StarBound-X thought. The longest rebellion lasted 40 years. The Cathari species refused integration and fought back. They were, eventually, defeated. 40 years, Chen repeated. Against your full military might. Interesting. You cannot compare yourselves to the Cathari, StarBound-X said quickly. They had a fleet of 2,000 ships when they rebelled. You have 12. 15 now, Chen corrected. We built 3 more this week. StarBound-X blinked. You built 3 warships in 1 week? They are not pretty ships, Chen admitted. They will probably fall apart after a few battles. But they fly, and they shoot. That is enough for now. Over the following days, StarBound-X learned more about humanity. What he learned disturbed him deeply. He studied their history and found endless war. Humans had been killing each other since they first picked up rocks and sticks. They had invented swords and bows and guns and bombs. They had created weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. And they had used those weapons on themselves. Your species dropped nuclear bombs on your own cities, StarBound-X said during one meeting. You killed hundreds of thousands of your own kind, in an instant. Yes, Vasquez replied simply. Why? To end a war. But the destruction. War is destruction, Ambassador. We know this better than anyone. We have been at war with ourselves for 10,000 years. We have tried every weapon, every tactic, every strategy. We have made every mistake possible. She leaned forward. And we are still here. StarBound-X visited a military base and watched human soldiers train. They ran until they collapsed, then got up and ran more. They fought each other with bare hands, breaking bones and spilling blood. They pushed their bodies past every reasonable limit. Why do they hurt themselves? StarBound-X asked General Chen. To prepare for when enemies hurt them, Chen explained. A soldier who has never felt pain will freeze when wounded. A soldier who knows pain will keep fighting. This seems inefficient. Perhaps. But it works. StarBound-X watched a young woman lift weights that should have been impossible for her small frame. Her face was red, her muscles shaking. But she did not stop. What drives her? StarBound-X asked. The same thing that drives all humans, Chen said. The refusal to quit. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not the smartest. But we do not give up. Ever. On his last day on Earth, StarBound-X sat with Vasquez in a small garden outside the UN building. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. Birds sang in the trees. It was peaceful. I have a question, StarBound-X said. Ask. You know you cannot win. Your fleet is tiny. Your technology is primitive. We could destroy your world in days. Yet you refuse to surrender. Why? Vasquez was quiet for a moment. She watched the sunset, with old, tired eyes. Ambassador, let me ask you a question first. In 12,000 years, has the Council ever met a species like us? No. StarBound-X admitted. Most species are peaceful when we find them. They have moved past war. They see our fleet and calculate the odds and surrender. It is logical, and that is why you will lose, Vasquez said softly. I do not understand. You have forgotten what it means to fight. Your species ended war thousands of years ago. You have perfect tactics and perfect strategies, but they are all written in books. They are theory, not experience. She turned to look at him. We have been fighting since we learned to walk. War is in our blood. It is in our bones. We do not want to fight. Ambassador, But we are very, very good at it. Thalvex felt cold despite the warm evening air. You are not ready for us, Vasquez continued. You think you know war, but you know only conquest. You have never faced a species that would rather die than kneel. You have never faced a species that smiles at death because death is an old friend we have met many times. She smiled that smile again, the one that had haunted Thalvex since the first transmission. Go back to your fleet, Ambassador. Tell your council what you have learned. Tell them that Earth does not surrender. Tell them that humanity says no. Thalvex stood. He looked down at this small, fragile woman who had just threatened the greatest power in the galaxy. What if we attack anyway? He asked. Then we will fight, and we will lose, and millions will die. Her smile did not waver. But you will remember us. For the rest of your history, you will remember the species that made you bleed. And you will wonder if the next species will say no too. Thalvex returned to his ship that night. He did not sleep. He kept thinking about what Vasquez had said. He kept thinking about that smile. He was beginning to understand what it meant. The 72 hours ended at midnight, Earth time. Ambassador Thalvex stood on his bridge and watched the clock count down to 0. He had sent his report to the council. He had described everything he had learned. He had recommended caution. The council had ignored him. Attack orders confirmed, Crix reported. The council demands immediate action. They say we must make an example of Earth. Other species are watching. Thalvex closed his eyes. He had hoped it would not come to this. But he was a soldier, and soldiers followed orders. Begin the assault, he commanded. Target their orbital stations first. Destroy their satellites. Blind them. 3 warships broke formation and moved toward Earth. They were the fastest ships in the fleet. Designed for quick strikes. Their weapons could vaporize steel from 1,000 kilometers away. Against human technology, they were unstoppable, or so everyone believed. The first warship approached a human space station. It was a small station, barely large enough for 50 people. The ship's commander did not even raise shields. Why bother? This would be over in seconds. A cargo vessel suddenly changed course and accelerated directly toward the warship. It was moving too fast to dodge. What is that fool doing? The commander asked. The cargo vessel struck the warship at full speed. It was carrying 20 nuclear warheads, all set to explode on impact. The explosion lit up the darkness of space like a new sun. When the light faded, both ships were gone. On the cargo vessel's final transmission, the pilot's voice was calm and steady. Tell my daughter I love her. And tell the aliens that humans do not run. Across Earth, billions of people watched. They saw one of their own die to destroy an enemy ship. They saw that the aliens could be hurt. They saw that the mighty fleet was not invincible, and they began to believe. The second warship approached Earth's communication satellites. Before it could fire, it was swarmed by thousands of tiny objects. They were satellites, but not communication satellites. They were weapons. Each one carried a small nuclear warhead and a simple computer brain. They attached themselves to the warship's hull like metal insects and exploded simultaneously. The warship's shields held against the first wave, and the second. But the humans kept sending more. Wave after wave of suicide drones, crashing against the shields until they finally failed. The warship's hull cracked. Air rushed out into space. The crew died in minutes. The third warship was more careful. It raised full shields and scanned for threats before moving. It found nothing dangerous nearby. Confident, it began targeting human defense platforms. Then its computers went insane. Every screen showed garbage. Every system gave wrong readings. The engines fired randomly, spinning the ship in circles. The weapons aimed at empty space and fired uselessly. The humans had uploaded a virus. During the negotiations, while Thalvex was drinking coffee and talking about peace, human hackers had studied every transmission from the fleet. They had found weaknesses in the alien software. They had written code specifically designed to destroy it. They had been preparing for war while smiling and offering friendship. Thalvex watched 3 of his ships die in less than an hour. His fleet still had 297 warships. Earth had lost hundreds of drones, 1 cargo vessel, and 3 brave pilots. By any calculation, the council was winning. But Thalvex did not feel like a winner. "Sir," a sensor officer reported, "we are detecting new contacts, human ships, coming from behind the moon." "How many?" 47. "No, 52. Sir." The count keeps increasing. Thalvex stared at the screen. When he had arrived at Earth, humans had 12 ships. Then 15. Now they had over 50. And more were appearing every minute. "That is impossible," Crick said. "They cannot build ships that fast." But the humans were not building new ships. They were converting old ones. Cargo vessels, passenger shuttles, mining ships, even an old space station. Anything that could fly was being fitted with weapons and sent into battle. "They are using civilian ships," Crick said with disgust. "That is against all rules of war." "I do not think humans care about rules," Thalvex replied. The battle began in earnest. Council warships fired their advanced weapons at the human fleet. Human ships died by the dozen. But for every ship destroyed, the humans learned something. They learned where the shields were weakest. They learned how fast the weapons could turn. They learned the patterns of Council tactics. And they adapted. Human ships began working in groups, attacking from multiple angles at once. They used asteroids as cover, hiding behind rocks and striking when Council ships got close. They sent fake signals to confuse sensors. They sacrificed damaged ships as missiles, ramming them into enemies. It was not pretty warfare. It was ugly and desperate and brutal. Humans died by the thousands. Their ships were torn apart by superior firepower. But they kept coming. They would not stop. General Chen commanded the defense from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. He had not slept in 3 days. His eyes were red, his hands shaking from too much coffee. But his voice was steady. "Send the reserve squadron to Sector 7, he ordered. "Tell Captain Williams to draw them toward the asteroid field. We have surprises waiting there." "Sir, that squadron has only 8 ships left. Then they will have to be enough." A young officer approached Chen with a report. "Sir, we have lost 40% of our orbital defenses. Casualties are approaching 50,000. Chen took the report. His face showed no emotion. He had sent soldiers to die before. He would send more before this was over. "What about the special project?" he asked. "Almost ready, sir. The engineers say 2 more hours. Tell them they have 1 hour, and tell them that humanity is counting on them." In shipyards around the world, engineers worked without rest. They were building something new. Something that would change the battle. It was called Project Phoenix, and it represented everything humans had learned in the past 72 hours. They had captured pieces of destroyed Council ships. They had studied the alien technology. They had combined it with human engineering. The result was a hybrid ship, faster than anything humans had built before, armed with weapons that were half alien and half human. It was ugly. It was dangerous. It would probably kill its own crew. But it would also kill enemies. "Sir," Crix reported from his station. "Something strange is happening. The human ships are retreating." Thalvex watched the display. The human fleet was pulling back toward Earth, abandoning positions they had fought hard to hold. It looked like defeat. "They are giving up," one officer said hopefully. "No," Thalvex said quietly. "They are regrouping. They are planning something." He was right. Behind the moon, hidden from Council sensors, 20 new ships powered up their engines. They were Project Phoenix ships. They were crewed by volunteers who knew they might not survive. They were humanity's answer to superior technology. Captain Sarah Park sat in the command chair of the lead ship. She was 34 years old. She had a husband and 2 children waiting on Earth. She might never see them again. She smiled anyway. "All ships, this is Phoenix Leader," she said into her communicator. "We have one job. Show these aliens that humanity does not break. Show them that we learn. Show them that every time they knock us down, we get back up stronger." She took a deep breath. "Let us teach them why humans smile when we fight." The Phoenix fleet emerged from behind the moon and charged directly at the Council armada. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and flying ships that were held together with tape and prayers. They attacked anyway, and for the first time, the Council fleet began to retreat. The news reached the Galactic Council in hours. Councilors from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber. a massive hall that floated in space at the center of their territory. For 3,000 years, this chamber had seen only routine business. Treaties were signed, trade disputes were settled. The council ruled with calm efficiency. Today, the chamber was filled with chaos. 17 ships destroyed, shouted Councillor Vethra of the Harmonium Collective. His blue skin had turned purple with anger. 17 of our finest warships, lost to primitives. The humans fight without honor, added Representative Gorm of the Kreth Dominion. They use civilian ships as weapons. They sacrifice their own people. They are animals. They are survivors, said a quiet voice. Everyone turned to look at the speaker. She was old, ancient by any species standards. The keeper of records had lived for 800 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She remembered things that others had forgotten. What do you mean, Keeper? Asked the council president. I mean that we have forgotten what young species are capable of. The keeper walked slowly to the center of the chamber. We have ruled for 12,000 years. We have not faced a real threat in 3,000. Our warriors train, but they have never fought. Our generals study tactics, but they have never seen blood. Our military is the most advanced in the galaxy. Vethra protested. Advanced. Yes, but soft. The keeper's eyes swept across the assembled counselors. When was the last time any of you saw a dead soldier? When was the last time you had to choose between surrendering and dying? Silence filled the chamber. The humans make that choice every day. The keeper continued. They have been making it for 10,000 years. They are not advanced. They are not sophisticated. But they are hard. They have been sharpened by endless war. We are a blade that has never been used. They are a blade that has cut through stone. The council debated for 7 days. Some demanded total war. Send every ship, every soldier, every weapon. Burn Earth to ash. Make an example that would frighten other species for 1,000 years. Others were not so sure. Consider the cost, argued Councillor Mira, of the Trade Federation. Even if we destroy Earth, we will lose hundreds of ships, perhaps thousands. Our economy will suffer. Other species will see that we can be hurt. We must show strength, Gorm insisted. If we back down now, every conquered species will think they can resist too. Perhaps that is what worries me, Mira replied. The debate continued, but something else was happening. Something the council did not expect. Humanity was not just fighting. They were talking. While human ships battled council forces, human diplomats sent messages across the galaxy. They found the communication channels of species that had been conquered centuries ago. They found resistance movements that had been crushed but never completely destroyed. They found people who still remembered freedom. The message was simple. You do not have to bow. We did not. On Keth Prime, a world that had been conquered 9,000 years ago, an old female named Saya listened to the human broadcast. She was the last of her family line. Her grandparents had told stories of the rebellion, of the days when Kethari ships had fought against impossible odds. They are going to die, her neighbor said, just like our ancestors died. Perhaps, Saya replied, but they will die standing. That is more than we have done for 9,000 years. On Vorn Station, a trading post at the edge of council space, dock workers gathered around a screen showing human ships attacking council vessels. They were Gorvani, a species that had surrendered without a fight 2,000 years ago. They had been servants ever since. Look at them, one worker whispered. They are so small. Their ships are garbage, but they will not stop. It is foolish, another said. They cannot win. Maybe winning is not the point. The workers watched in silence as a human ship, burning and broken, rammed itself into a council cruiser. The explosion destroyed both ships. Why would anyone do that? A young Gorvani asked. Because some things are worth more than living, an old worker answered. We forgot that. Maybe it is time to remember. In the Great Chamber, the council finally reached a decision. They would send reinforcements to Earth, 200 more ships, the finest in the fleet. They would crush the human resistance completely. They would leave no doubt about council power. But as the orders were sent, something unexpected happened. The Kethari representative stood up. In 9,000 years, No Cathari had ever spoken in the council chamber. They were a conquered species. They had no voice. "I wish to speak," she said. The chamber went silent. "You have no right," Vethra said. "Conquered species do not speak in council. Perhaps it is time to change that rule." Guards moved toward her. But before they could reach her, something remarkable happened. Representatives from other conquered species stood up. The Gorvani, the Treth, the Malar, species that had been silent for centuries suddenly found their voices. "We wish to speak too," the Gorvani representative said. "Sit down," Gorm shouted. "This is treason." "Is it?" the Keeper of Records asked quietly. "Or is it evolution?" The council chamber erupted into chaos. Guards tried to remove the standing representatives. Other councilors shouted and argued. The carefully maintained order of 12,000 years was cracking, and across the galaxy, people watched. They saw conquered species standing up. They saw the council losing control. They saw that power was not as absolute as they had believed. On Earth, Secretary General Vasquez received reports of the chaos. She was in a bunker now, commanding the defense alongside General Chen. She had not seen sunlight in a week, but for the first time since the invasion began, she felt hope. "It is working," she said. "The idea is spreading." "What idea?" Chen asked. "That you can say no. That you can stand up. That even if you lose, you can inspire others to keep fighting." She looked at the reports from across the galaxy. "We started something, General. Something bigger than Earth. We are still losing the battle," Chen reminded her. "More ships arrive every day. Our fleet is down to 30 operational vessels. We cannot hold much longer." "We do not need to hold forever," Vasquez replied. "We just need to hold long enough for the idea to spread. Once it spreads, they cannot stop it. Even if Earth falls, the idea survives." Chen was quiet for a moment. He was a soldier. He dealt in ships and weapons and tactics. Ideas were not his specialty. "How long do you need?" he finally asked. "As long as you can give me." Chen nodded. He turned back to his tactical display, where human ships were dying to buy time. "Then we will give you everything we have." In the great chamber, the chaos eventually subsided. The standing representatives were removed. The order was restored. But something had changed. The councilors looked at each other differently now. They had seen cracks in their power. They had seen what one small species could inspire. "This changes nothing," Vethra declared. "Earth will fall. The humans will be destroyed. Order will be maintained." "Perhaps," the Keeper of Records said. "But the question is no longer whether we can destroy Earth. The question is what happens after. After every conquered species has seen humans die rather than kneel. After every servant has watched the mighty council struggle against primitives." The Keeper shook her head. "You can kill the humans, Counselor, but you cannot kill what they represent." Vethra had no answer. In the darkness of space, the battle continued. Human ships fought and died. Council ships advanced. Earth's defenses weakened hour by hour. But across the galaxy, something was waking up. Something that had slept for thousands of years. Hope. 1 year had passed since the ultimatum. Earth still stood. The cost had been terrible. 12 million humans had died in the fighting. Cities had burned. Oceans had boiled where orbital strikes hit the water. The human fleet had been destroyed and rebuilt 3 times. Every family had lost someone. But Earth still stood. The Battle of Proxima Centauri had changed everything. Human ships, built from stolen technology and human stubbornness, had met the Council's reinforcement fleet at the edge of the solar system. It should have been a slaughter. The Council had 300 fresh warships. Humanity had 70 vessels held together by welding and willpower. The battle lasted 9 days. When it ended, the Council fleet retreated. They had lost 100 ships. Humanity had lost 50. By the numbers, the Council had won. But the Council had never lost 100 ships before. Not to anyone. Not ever. "They are retreating," General Chen reported to Secretary General Vasquez. His voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. He had aged 10 years in the past 12 months. "Our scouts confirm the main fleet is pulling back to Council space." Vasquez closed her eyes. She wanted to cry. She wanted to sleep. She wanted to see the sun again. "What does the council say?" she asked. "They want to negotiate." For a long moment, Vasquez said nothing. Negotiate. After everything they had done, after every city they had bombed, after every ship they had destroyed. Now they wanted to talk. "Tell them yes," she finally said. "But this time we set the terms." Ambassador Thalvex returned to Earth for the second time. The world he found was different from the one he had left. The beautiful cities he remembered were scarred by war. The skies were gray with dust and smoke. The people were thinner, harder, marked by loss, but they were still smiling. Secretary General Vasquez met him at a military base outside what remained of Geneva. She was not the same woman he had met a year ago. Her hair was completely white now. Her face was lined with grief, but her eyes burned with something that made Thalvex uncomfortable. "Victory, Ambassador," she said. "Welcome back to Earth, Madam Secretary." Thalvex looked around at the armed guards, the fortified walls, the weapons pointed at his shuttle. "Security has increased since my last visit. We learned to be careful." They sat across from each other in a bare concrete room. No coffee this time, no pleasantries. The time for friendly conversation had passed. "The Council has sent a new offer," Thalvex began. "Full membership in the Galactic Council, equal standing with all other species. Your sovereignty will be recognized. Your culture will be preserved. You will have a voice in all decisions." Vasquez listened without expression. "In exchange," Thalvex continued, "humanity will end all hostile actions against Council forces. You will share the hybrid technology you have developed, and you will stop sending messages to other species." "The messages that tell them they can refuse?" Vasquez asked. "Yes." Vasquez was quiet for a moment. She looked down at the datapad containing the Council's offer. Everything they had fought for was there. Freedom, recognition, a seat at the table, but it was not enough. "Ambassador, I have a counteroffer." Thalvex felt his scales tighten. He had expected this. "The Council is prepared to negotiate some terms." "Good, because our terms are not negotiable." Vasquez stood and walked to a window. Outside, soldiers trained on muddy ground. Ships flew overhead, patrolling for threats that might never come. "There are 19 species in the Council that were conquered like you tried to conquer us," she said. "The Kethari, the Gorvani, the Treth. 19 peoples who lost their freedom because they could not say no. Those conquests happened thousands of years ago," Thalvex said. "They are part of history. History can be changed." Vasquez turned to face him. "We want the compact rewritten. Every species gets the same choice. If they want to stay in the Council, they stay. If they want to leave, they leave. Peacefully. No punishment, no retaliation." Thalvex stared at her. "You are asking us to give up our empire?" "No. We are asking you to make it voluntary. An empire of willing members is stronger than an empire of slaves. The Council will never agree. Then we keep fighting." Vasquez smiled that smile, the one Thalvex had learned to fear. "We will fight for another year, 10 years, 100 years, however long it takes. You cannot win a war against the entire Council. Maybe not. But we can make victory cost more than it is worth." She walked back to the table and leaned forward. "Your analysts have run the projections, Ambassador. You know what humanity will look like in 100 years if you leave us alone. You know how fast we learn. You know how quickly we adapt." Thalvex knew. He had seen the projections. In 100 years, humanity would have a fleet larger than the Council's. In 200 years, they would be the dominant power in the galaxy. The Council had found a species that grew stronger when attacked. "And that is just Earth," Vasquez continued. 19 species are watching what we do. If we win freedom for ourselves, they will want freedom too. If we can inspire them to fight, you will face rebellion on 100 worlds. This is blackmail. This is reality." Vasquez sat back down. "We do not want to rule the galaxy, Ambassador. We do not want revenge. We just want everyone to have the choice we had. The choice to say no." The negotiations lasted 3 months. The Council resisted. They argued. They threatened. But in the end, they had no choice. The new compact was signed on the anniversary of Earth's refusal. Representatives from all 47 species gathered in the rebuilt United Nations headquarters. For the first time, the conquered species had their own representatives, chosen by their own people. Secretary General Vasquez gave the final speech. 1 year ago, the Galactic Council ordered Earth to surrender. They expected us to kneel. They expected us to be afraid. She looked out at the assembled delegates, human and alien alike. They did not understand what they were dealing with. She paused, letting the silence fill the room. We are not special. We are not chosen. We are just stubborn. We refuse to accept that our fate was decided by someone else. We refuse to believe that strength was the only thing that mattered. Her eyes found Thalvex in the crowd. He nodded slightly. Today, that stubbornness has changed the galaxy. Today, every species has the right to choose their own future. Today, the word no has power again. She smiled. To the Council I say this. We could have been enemies forever. We chose to be partners instead. Judge us not by how we fought, but by what we fought for. She turned to face the cameras that broadcast to 1 trillion beings across the galaxy. To everyone else I say this. You do not have to be powerful to be free. You do not have to be advanced to have dignity. You just have to be willing to stand up and say one word. She raised her hand. No. The chamber erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens embraced. On 100 worlds, people watched and wept and hoped. Ambassador Thalvex found Vasquez after the ceremony. She was standing alone on a balcony, looking up at the stars. You changed everything, he said. We changed everything together. She did not look away from the sky. Your report to the Council, the one that recommended caution. That report saved millions of lives. Thalvex was surprised. You knew about that? We intercepted it. Your warning made the Council hesitate. That hesitation gave us time to prepare. She finally turned to face him. You could have destroyed us in those first 72 hours. Why did you recommend waiting? Thalvex thought about the question. He thought about the first time he had seen humans smile in the face of destruction. He thought about the coffee and the conversations and the strange creatures who had refused to be afraid. Because I wanted to understand, he said. In 12,000 years, no one had ever said no. I wanted to know why you were different. And did you find out? Thalvex looked at the celebration happening inside. Humans and aliens laughing together. Former enemies becoming friends. Yes, he said. You were different because you believed you could be. That is all. You simply believed. Vasquez smiled one last time. Not a defiant smile. Not a warrior's smile. Just a human smile, warm and genuine. That is the secret, Ambassador. That is what we gave the galaxy tonight. The belief that things can be different. The belief that tomorrow does not have to be like yesterday. She looked up at the stars. The universe is very old. But hope, real hope, is always new. And across the galaxy, on 100 worlds, people looked up at the same stars and smiled. They had learned something from the strange small creatures on a tiny blue planet. They had learned how to say no. And they had learned to smile while saying it.